The Valdran Empire had been unstoppable for 3,000 years. 847 star systems had fallen before their fleets, each conquest adding another jewel to the Emperor's crown. They had crushed species with technology far more advanced than what they now saw in human space. Some had begged for mercy. Others had fought desperately. None had survived as independent civilizations. War Marshal Cat Hex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, studying the holographic display of human territory. His purple skin gleamed under the bridge lights as he gestured dismissively at the data. 12 systems, his tactical officer said, pointing at the scattered dots on the map. Our scouts confirm primitive defensive installations. Based on their industrial output, we estimate fewer than 500 military vessels across their entire space. Cathex's mandibles clicked in what passed for Valdran laughter. 500 ships? We've faced garden worlds with better defenses. He turned to his communications officer. Prepare the standard subjugation message. They have 48 hours to surrender unconditionally. And if they refuse, War Marshal? Then we demonstrate what happens to species who waste our time. Cat Hex dispatched the third subjugation fleet without a second thought. 2,000 warships, each capable of glassing a planet's surface in hours. It was more firepower than most species saw in their entire existence. For humanity it seemed like overkill. But Cat Hex believed in sending messages. Clear, unmistakable messages. Across the galaxy, at Proxima Station, Commander Jack Morrison received the Valdran ultimatum with a heavy heart. He was 43 years old, a career Navy officer who had spent most of his life on peaceful patrol routes. The most action he'd seen was chasing down pirates near the asteroid mining colonies. Now he commanded 47 ships against an armada that blotted out the stars. "Sir, should we evacuate?" his executive officer asked. Lieutenant Danny Walsh was young, barely 25, and his hands trembled slightly as he gripped the tactical console. Jack shook his head. "Where would they go, Danny? The Valdran fleet would just hunt them down. No, we hold here. We buy time for the outer colonies to get their civilians out." 47 ships against 2,000, Danny whispered. "Those aren't fighting odds, sir." "No," Jack agreed quietly. "They're not. But somebody has to stand first. Somebody has to show these bastards that humans don't just roll over." He activated the fleet-wide communication channel, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his gut. "All hands, this is Morrison. You all know what's coming. You've all seen the scans. I won't lie to you, we're not walking away from this." He paused, looking out at the stars where his small fleet waited in formation. "But those colonies behind us? They've got families. Kids. People who deserve a chance to live. Our job is simple, buy them time. Make every shot count. Make the Valdran remember that humanity doesn't die quietly." The responses came back one by one. Every ship. Every captain. They understood. The Valdran fleet arrived like a dark tide. Their ships were massive, triangular dreadnoughts that dwarfed the human vessels. Cat Hex didn't even bother with preliminary negotiations. "Destroy them," he ordered. The battle lasted 18 brutal minutes. Jack's ships fought with desperate courage, darting between the larger Valdran vessels, targeting engines and weapon systems. The human pilots flew like demons, using every trick they knew. They took 12 Valdran ships with them, a minor miracle given the odds. But mathematics don't care about courage. One by one the human ships died. Jack's own vessel, the Ranger, took a direct hit to the reactor. In his last moments he managed to ram his burning ship into a Valdran cruiser, taking it down with him. When the debris finally stopped glowing, Cat Hex surveyed the battlefield with satisfaction. "Acceptable losses," he noted. 12 ships out of 2,000 was nothing. He opened a channel to Earth, broadcasting his terms. Total surrender. Immediate disarmament. Integration into the Valdran Empire as a subject species. He gave them 48 hours to respond. Then Cat Hex settled back in his command throne and waited for the inevitable. They always surrendered eventually. Some took longer than others, but they all came around when they realized the alternative was extinction. Hours passed. Then days. The deadline came and went. But there was no response from Earth. No desperate pleas for mercy. No defiant last words. Just silence. Cat Hex frowned. The silence bothered him more than any threat could have. In 3,000 years of conquest, he'd learned that silence meant only one thing: preparation. But preparing what? The humans had just lost their outer defense fleet. Their colonies were evacuating in chaos. What could they possibly be preparing with their handful of remaining ships? He dismissed the thought. Let them prepare. Let them scrape together whatever pitiful resistance they could muster. The Third Fleet would roll over them just as easily as they had destroyed Proxima Station. Cat Hex ordered the fleet forward, deeper into human space. Behind him, the debris field that had once been 47 human ships drifted silently among the stars. It would serve as a warning to anyone who dared resist the Valdran Empire. He had no idea that those 47 ships had just bought humanity exactly what it needed most. Time. 3 months had crawled by since the destruction of Proxima Station, and War Marshal Cat Hex was learning what frustration truly meant. The confident smirk he'd worn during that first easy victory had vanished, replaced by a permanent scowl that made his subordinates nervous. Contact. Multiple signatures emerging from hyperspace. His navigator's voice cracked with barely controlled panic. This was the 15th ambush in 2 weeks. How many? Cat Hex demanded, already knowing he wouldn't like the answer. 30 vessels, War Marshal. Same configuration as before. They're targeting our supply convoy. Cat Hex slammed his fist against the armrest. All ships, combat formation. Don't let them. But the human ships were already moving. They appeared out of nowhere, struck with surgical precision, and vanished before the Valdran could bring their superior numbers to bear. It was like fighting shadows. Captain Kelly Brooks sat in the command chair of the frigate Defiant, watching her tactical display with calm focus. She was 38, a veteran of colonial patrol duty, and she'd spent the last 3 months making the Valdran Empire's life absolutely miserable. Targets locked, her weapons officer reported. Lieutenant Jake Patterson had steady hands despite the fact they were outnumbered 60-1 by the surrounding Valdran fleet. All wings, pattern Delta 7, Kelly ordered, her voice carrying that particular kind of calm that only comes from doing something dangerous so many times it becomes routine. Hit the engines and jump out. 30-second window, people. Make it count. The Defiant and her sister ships dove into the Valdran formation like wolves among sheep. Their weapons weren't as powerful as the massive Valdran dreadnoughts, but they were faster, more maneuverable, and the crews had been training for exactly this kind of fight since the day Proxima fell. Missiles streaked through the void. Human railguns hammered at Valdran engine blocks. In 28 seconds, 5 Valdran supply ships were crippled and 3 escort cruisers were venting atmosphere. Jump window opening in 3, 1, a mark. Reality twisted. The human ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving the furious Valdran to count their losses and curse the empty void where their enemies had been. Kelly allowed herself a small smile as the Defiant dropped back into normal space 3 light-years away. Damage report? Hull breach on Deck 3 already sealed. 1 casualty, medical says he'll be fine. We're down to 70% missile stocks. Not bad for a day's work. Kelly pulled up the tactical map, already planning the next strike. Send the data to Fleet Command. They need to know the Valdran supply lines are stretched thin through this sector. She didn't mention the exhaustion that pulled at her bones, or the fact that she'd slept maybe 10 hours in the past week. None of her crew did. They all understood what was at stake. Back on the Valdran flagship, Cat Hex stared at the casualty reports with mounting disbelief. 400 ships. In 3 months, these human guerrilla forces had destroyed or disabled 400 Valdran warships. His intelligence officer, a methodical analyst named Vren, reviewed the production data for what felt like the 1000th time. War Marshal, the mathematics are clear. Based on the industrial capacity of 12 star systems, humanity cannot possess more than 800 military vessels. We've confirmed the destruction of 47 at Proxima. We've engaged approximately 300 unique ship signatures in these skirmishing actions. Meaning? Cat Hex already knew what the officer was going to say, but he wanted to hear it spoken aloud. Meaning we're bleeding them dry, sir. They're throwing everything they have at us trying to slow our advance. But it's unsustainable. By our estimates, they have fewer than 400 ships remaining. Perhaps as few as 300. Cat Hex nodded slowly. The logic was sound. The humans were fighting desperately because they had no other choice. They were spending their last reserves trying to buy time for what? Evacuation? Negotiations? It didn't matter. Request reinforcement from High Command, he ordered. The 1st and 7th fleets. I want 5,000 additional ships. Vren's eyes widened. Sir, that's nearly our entire mobile reserve. For a species with only a few hundred vessels remaining? I'm tired of these games, Cat Hex growled. I'm tired of watching supply convoys burn. I'm tired of ghost ships appearing and disappearing. We're going to assemble an armada so overwhelming that even if every remaining human ship attacks at once, it won't matter. We'll crush them at Earth itself and end this irritating campaign once and for all. The request went up the chain of command. The Valdran Emperor, annoyed at the prolonged resistance but confident in the ultimate outcome, approved. After all, the mathematics were clear. Humanity was running out of ships. The 1st and 7th fleets began their journey to join the 3rd. 5,000 fresh warships, their crews eager for glory, their captains confident in swift victory. Combined with the 1,600 ships Cat Hex still commanded, it would be the largest Valdran armada assembled in 2 centuries. 7,000 warships to crush a species that, by all intelligence estimates, had fewer than 400 vessels left. It seemed like overkill. Cat Hex meant it to be. He wanted to break humanity so completely that their surrender would echo across the galaxy as a warning to every other species that might consider resistance. Meanwhile, Captain Kelly Brooks and thousands of other human border patrol officers continued their deadly dance. Hit and run. Strike and fade. They didn't know exactly what Fleet Command was planning. They just knew their orders by time. Slow the advance. Make every Valdran ship that crossed into human space pay a price. And if anyone had bothered to ask Kelly whether humanity was throwing everything they had into this fight, she would have laughed. The Colonial Border Guard wasn't everything. It wasn't even close. But the Valdran didn't ask. They just counted ships and calculated odds, comfortable in their mathematical certainty of victory. They had no idea how wrong they were. The combined Valdran armada descended on the Sol system like a hammer of the gods. 7,000 warships had entered human space. After 3 months of brutal fighting with the Border Guard, nearly 5,000 remained. War Marshal Cat Hex surveyed the red planet ahead with grim satisfaction. Mars. The second jewel in humanity's crown. And standing between him and Earth, the last pitiful remnants of human resistance. Major Tom Bradley had been born on Mars. 41 years old, he'd grown up watching the terraforming dome spread across the red soil, turning dead rock into a world where his children could breathe open air. Now he stood on the bridge of the battlecruiser Olympus Mons, looking at a tactical display that showed 600 human ships facing nearly 5,000 Valdran. "They think this is all we have left," Tom said quietly to his assembled captains on the video link. The faces staring back at him ranged from grizzled veterans to young officers barely out of the academy. "Intelligence says the Valdran believe they've been fighting our entire fleet these past 3 months." Captain Rachel Hawkins, commanding the destroyer Phobos, let out a bitter laugh. "They think the Border Guard was our main force? God, they really don't understand us at all." "No, they don't," Tom agreed. "And we're going to use that. Our orders are simple: make them pay for every meter of space. The longer we hold, the more time command has to finish preparations." Lieutenant Bobby Chin, the youngest captain in the defense fleet at just 29, raised his hand slightly. "Sir, we all know how this ends. 600 against 5,000. What exactly are we buying time for?" Tom smiled, but there was sadness in his eyes. "Bobby, I can't tell you that. What I can tell you is this: your families are safe. Everyone who matters is either deep in the shelters or already evacuated to the inner system. When the history books talk about this day, they're going to say that Mars defense gave humanity what it needed most." He paused. "They're going to say we mattered." The silence on the comm channel was heavy with understanding. None of them were leaving this battlefield alive. "All ships." Tom's voice was steady, almost gentle. "This is Major Bradley. Mars Defense Fleet, weapons free. Show these invaders what happens when you threaten our home." The Battle of Mars was nothing like the quick skirmishes the Border Guard had fought. This was a stand-up fight, 2 fleets crashing together like waves of steel and fire. The human ships fought with the desperation of people protecting everything they loved. Tom's tactical officer called out targets in rapid succession. Dreadnought approaching, port side. Cruiser formation moving to flank. "Sir, they're trying to surround us." "Let them try," Tom said calmly. "All power to forward shields. Target that dreadnought's bridge and fire everything we've got." The Olympus Mons shuddered as every weapon fired at once. The Valdran dreadnought's shields collapsed, and the massive ship began to list, venting atmosphere and debris. But for every Valdran ship that died, the humans paid a terrible price. The numbers were simply overwhelming. Captain Hawkins's destroyer went down fighting, ramming a Valdran cruiser at full speed when her weapons ran dry. Bobby Chen's ship lasted 40 minutes before a plasma torpedo tore through its reactor. He managed to eject his crew pods before the explosion, one small mercy in an ocean of sacrifice. Tom watched his fleet die ship by ship. But the Valdran paid. Oh, how they paid. For every human vessel destroyed, 2 Valdran ships followed them into the dark. The Mars defense crews fought with a precision born of excellent training and the absolute certainty that their deaths had to mean something. When the Olympus Mons finally took critical damage, Tom had just 16 ships left out of 600. His bridge was on fire, half his crew dead or dying, and the tactical display showed Valdran vessels closing from all sides. All remaining ships, he transmitted, his voice rough from smoke inhalation. It's been an honor. Tell them we held. Tell them Mars stood. The last 16 ships of the Mars Defense Fleet charged directly into the Valdran Center formation. None of them survived. Neither did the 32 Valdran vessels they took with them. War Marshal Cat Hex stared at the aftermath in stunned silence. He'd lost 1,200 ships. 1,200. Against 600 human vessels. The exchange ratio was completely unacceptable by every military standard he knew. But the path to Earth was open. He had 4,800 ships remaining, still an overwhelming force. The humans had thrown everything at him and lost. Forward to Earth, he ordered quietly. End this. The battered Valdran armada limped toward the blue jewel hanging in the void ahead. As they approached Earth's moon, Cat Hex expected to find another desperate defense fleet, the last dying gasp of human resistance. Instead, his sensors detected almost nothing. Some civilian traffic, orbital stations, and one small diplomatic vessel approaching under a flag of truce. They're surrendering, Vren said with obvious relief. Finally, a human face appeared on the main view screen. Ambassador Mike Reynolds looked tired but unbowed, a man in his 50s with gray hair and steady eyes. War Marshal Cat Hex, Mike said formally. I bring a message from the Human Systems Alliance. You have 7 days to withdraw all forces from human space. This is your only warning. Leave now and live. The bridge fell silent. Then Cat Hex began to laugh. It started as a chuckle but built into full-bodied laughter that echoed off the walls. You just lost 600 ships, Cat Hex finally managed. My scouts show no defense fleet. No weapon platforms. Nothing but your civilians cowering on their homeworld. And you dare threaten me? Mike's expression didn't change. I'm not threatening you, War Marshal. I'm offering you mercy. 7 days. You have no ships left. Cat Hex roared. I have 4,800 warships surrounding your homeworld. Surrender or I will burn your cities from orbit. Mike was quiet for a long moment. Then he said very softly, we tried. Remember that we tried. The transmission ended. Cat Hex turned to his weapons officer. Begin bombardment of their military installations. Show them what defiance costs. The weapons officer input the targeting coordinates. Firing in 3, 1. Then the universe changed. The bombardment never reached Earth's surface. Space itself seemed to tear apart. Contacts, the Valdran sensor operator screamed, his voice climbing several octaves. Multiple hyperspace signatures. Hundreds of them. Thousands. War Marshal Cat Hex spun toward the tactical display, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The screen was filled with red warning icons, so many they overlapped into a solid mass. They emerged from everywhere. From behind Jupiter's moons, boiling out of hiding like angry hornets. From Saturn's rings where they'd been sitting silent and dark for months. From the asteroid belt, from Venus orbit, from stations hidden in Earth's own moon. Ship after ship after ship, each one broadcasting Human Systems Alliance military codes. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the HSA Defiance, a ship so massive it made the Valdran dreadnoughts look like children's toys. She was 52 years old, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, and she'd been waiting for this moment since the day Proxima Station fell. All fleet elements reporting ready, Admiral, her communications officer said. Commander Dave Peterson had served with Kate for 15 years, and his voice was steady as rock. Kate looked out at the view screen, at the Valdran armada that had dared to threaten Earth. Open a channel. All Valdran ships. Her face appeared on every Valdran screen in the system. This is Admiral Kate Sullivan, commanding the Sol Home Fleet. You attacked our colonies. You killed our people. You threatened our homeworld. She let that sink in. You made a mistake. A fatal one. Cat Hex stared at his tactical display in absolute horror. The numbers kept climbing. 10,000 ships. 20,000. 30,000. His officer couldn't even get an accurate count because they were still emerging from hyperspace. How? He whispered. How is this possible? His intelligence officer Vren had gone pale, his hands shaking as he pulled up real-time data feeds. War Marshal, updated scans of Earth. The population. It's not millions. It's 14 billion. 14 billion people on one planet. That's impossible, Kathex said, but even as he spoke he knew it was true. Mars, Vren continued, his voice breaking. 6 billion. Venus orbital colonies, 3 billion more. The Sol system isn't one planet. It's a hive. They're everywhere. Moons, stations, asteroids. The entire system is inhabited. The tactical display updated again. The asteroid belt wasn't just hiding ships. It was filled with shipyards. Massive construction facilities, each one building warships on a scale the Valdren had never imagined. 200 shipyards in Earth orbit alone, Vren read from his screen. Mars has 83. Venus, our ancestors preserve us. They've been building ships non-stop since before we even entered their space. Kate's voice cut through the chaos on the Valdren bridge. You want to know what you're facing? Let me educate you. The 47 ships at Proxima Station? That was the 3rd Colonial Defense Wing. Volunteers and militia protecting our frontier. The 900 ships that bloodied your fleets for 3 months? That was the Colonial Border Guard, buying time for civilian evacuations. She paused, letting them absorb that. The 600 ships that died at Mars? That was the Mars Orbital Defense Force. Good people. Brave people. People who gave their lives to protect their families while their children slept safely in bunkers 2 miles underground. Kathex felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Raw primal fear. The 35,000 ships you see surrounding you right now? Kate's smile was cold as ice. This is the home fleet. Just one of 7 fleet commands in the Human Systems Alliance. We have colony fleets protecting our outer settlements. We have expeditionary fleets exploring unknown space. We have reserve fleets that haven't even left their docks. Lieutenant Jenny Walsh, Kate's tactical officer, highlighted targets on the display. Admiral, we have firing solutions on all enemy vessels. Wait, Kate said. She wasn't done with her message. Your intelligence told you we controlled 12 systems, she continued. That was partially true. We have 12 frontier colonies. Young worlds barely settled. But humanity doesn't come from those colonies, War Marshal. We come from here. From Sol. And Sol alone has 47 inhabited worlds and moons. Earth, Mars, Venus, Europa, Titan, Ganymede, Callisto. Should I keep going? Kathex couldn't breathe. The mathematics his intelligence officer had been so confident about. They were all wrong. Completely, catastrophically wrong. The Human Systems Alliance controls 89 settled worlds across 47 star systems, Kate said. We have a combined population of 270 billion people. And every single one of them is angry at you right now. She leaned forward. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to destroy your fleet. But we're going to let you live, War Marshal. One ship. Yours. You're going to return to your empire, and you're going to tell them exactly what you saw here today. All ships. Kate switched to the fleet channel. Weapons free. Fire at will. The home fleet opened fire. The battle lasted 4 hours. The Valdren fought desperately, but it didn't matter. They were outnumbered 7-1 by ships that were newer, faster, and crewed by people defending their homeworld. Captain Ryan Tucker commanded a destroyer wing that tore through Valdren cruisers like paper. Colonel Beth Martinez led a fighter squadron that protected the larger ships. Commander Tim Brennan's battlecruiser took down 3 Valdren dreadnoughts single-handedly before taking any damage. The humans fought with precision and overwhelming force. No desperate last stands. No heroic sacrifices. Just professional, methodical destruction of an enemy that had threatened everything they loved. When it was over, 4,700 Valdren ships were debris fields. Only one remained intact, Kathex's flagship, surrounded by 200 human vessels with weapons locked and ready. Kate's face appeared on his screen one last time. Go home, War Marshal. Tell them what happens when you underestimate humanity. And pray we never decide to visit you. The flagship's engines came online, the humans allowing it to leave. Kathex sat in his command chair, broken and defeated, watching Earth recede in the distance. Behind him, the most powerful military force he'd ever seen remained on guard, watching him go. The journey back to Valdren space took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of silence aboard Kathex's flagship. The crew moved like ghosts, speaking only when necessary, avoiding eye contact with their war marshal. They'd watched their entire armada die. 7,000 ships reduced to 1 in a matter of hours. When the flagship finally entered Valdren home space, the Imperial Guard was waiting. They'd expected a triumphant fleet returning with news of humanity's subjugation. Instead, they found a single battered vessel limping home like a wounded animal. The Emperor convened an emergency council within hours. The Grand Chamber was filled with military commanders, intelligence chiefs, and political advisors. War Marshal Cat Hex stood at the center, looking decades older than when he'd left. "Explain," Emperor Thali said coldly. His voice echoed through the chamber. "You left with 7,000 ships to conquer a species with 12 systems. Where is my fleet?" Cathex's voice was hollow. "Gone, Your Majesty. All gone." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. General Vox, commander of the Second Imperial Legion, stepped forward. "Impossible. Our intelligence reports indicated the humans had fewer than 1,000 ships total. We destroyed hundreds in the border conflicts. They had nothing left." "That's what we thought," Cat Hex said quietly. "We were wrong. About everything." He activated the holographic display, showing footage from the Battle of Earth. The council watched in stunned silence as thousands upon thousands of human ships emerged from hiding. The recording showed the tactical display, the numbers climbing impossibly high. 35,000 ships, Cat Hex said. That's what they had waiting at Earth. Not counting what we'd already destroyed. Not counting what we never saw. Admiral Nex, the Empire's chief strategist, shook her head. "The mathematics don't support this. 12 systems cannot produce such a fleet. It's impossible." 12 frontier colonies, Cat Hex corrected. Not 12 systems total. They have 47 settled star systems. 89 inhabited worlds. Sol system alone. He trailed off, pulling up the data. Earth has 14 billion people. One planet. 14 billion. The council chamber fell deathly silent. The entire Valdran Empire had a population of 22 billion spread across 847 systems. Earth alone nearly matched that. Intelligence Director Mora stepped forward, her face pale. That population density is unprecedented. How are they sustaining that many people on one world? They're not just sustaining them. They're thriving. Cat Hex brought up images of Earth cities, massive structures reaching into the clouds, orbital platforms stretching across the sky. And it's not just Earth. Mars has 6 billion. Venus orbital colonies have 3 billion more. Their moons, their stations, their asteroid bases, the entire system is inhabited. It's one massive hive of humanity. He pulled up more data, his hands trembling. 200 shipyards in Earth orbit. 83 on Mars. Over 400 shipyards across the Sol system alone. They've been building warships for decades. Maybe centuries. We have no idea how long they've been preparing. Emperor Thales leaned forward on his throne. And their military strength? The 47 ships at Proxima Station, Cat Hex began, his voice cracking slightly. That was one colonial defense wing. A militia unit. Volunteers protecting a frontier outpost. The 900 ships that harassed us for 3 months? That was the Colonial Border Guard. Not their main military. Not even close. Just border patrol. He paused, gathering himself. The 600 ships at Mars that cost us 1,200 vessels? That was the Mars Orbital Defense Force. A planetary guard unit protecting one world. And the 35,000 ships that destroyed our armada? General Vox asked, though he clearly didn't want to hear the answer. The Home Fleet, Cat Hex said. Admiral Kate Sullivan commanded it. And before she destroyed us, she made sure we understood something. She said the Home Fleet was just one of 7 fleet commands. 7. They have colony fleets, expeditionary fleets, reserve fleets we never encountered. The hologram changed, showing a recording. Admiral Sullivan's face appeared, her words echoing through the council chamber. Earth alone has 200 shipyards. We have 89 more inhabited worlds. Tell your emperor what happens when you underestimate humanity. Emperor Thales sat back heavily. Casualties. Complete, Cat Hex whispered. 6,999 ships lost. 4,700 in the final battle alone. They let me live on purpose. To deliver their message. The message played again. This time it was Commander Ben Parker, a human officer who transmitted directly to Cathex's flagship during the battle. Tell your emperor, Earth's children slept safely while we destroyed your fleets. We never declared war. We never mobilized. This was a defensive action. If you want to see what humanity looks like when we actually fight, please, try again. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Intelligence Director Mora pulled up star maps, her calculations running frantically. If their defensive forces alone number over 40,000 ships, and they claim this wasn't a full mobilization, then we can't win, Admiral Nex finished quietly. Even if we sent every ship we have, we'd be outnumbered. Possibly by a significant margin. Emperor Thales stared at the hologram of human space for a long time. The Valdran Empire had stood for 3,000 years. 847 conquered systems. Hundreds of species brought under imperial rule. They'd never faced defeat like this. Pull back all forces from the border regions, he finally ordered. Fortify our core systems. Begin construction of defensive stations along our frontier. Your Majesty, General Vox protested, we can't simply abandon territory because. We're not abandoning territory, the Emperor cut him off. We're ensuring survival. This species, humanity, they're not like the others. They don't just have strength. They have industrial capacity we can't match. Population density we can't comprehend. And worst of all, he gestured to the recording of the human ships. They have patience. They let us come to them. They bled us slowly. Then they crushed us completely while their civilians slept safely in their beds. He stood, his ancient frame somehow seeming smaller. Send ambassadors. Not conquerors. Not soldiers. Diplomats. Offer trade, peace, whatever they want. Just keep them away from our borders. Across the galaxy, humanity watched the Valdran flagship return home. Admiral Kate Sullivan sat in her office on the newly commissioned HSA Defiance, reading intelligence reports. The Valdran are pulling back, Commander Peterson reported. Fortifying their borders. No aggressive movements. Kate nodded slowly. Good. Maybe they learned their lesson. And our mobilization, Admiral? Kate looked out at the shipyards, where new vessels were taking shape against the stars. Continuous planned. Expand the fleet. Triple our standing forces. Build defensive platforms in every colony system. Ma'am, that's a massive expenditure. The politicians won't like it. They'll like extinction less, Kate said quietly. We were underestimated once, Dave. We got lucky. The Valdran assumed we were weak. Next time we might face someone who does their homework. Someone who comes prepared. She turned to face him. I want to make sure that when that day comes, when someone else looks at humanity and thinks about conquest, they remember what happened here. They remember Earth. And if they don't remember? Kate's smile was cold. Then we'll teach them. Again and again until every species in this galaxy understands one simple truth. Humanity protects its own. Always. In the shipyards above Earth, Mars, Venus, and 100 other human worlds, the work continued. Not for conquest. Not for glory. For insurance. For the promise that no human child would ever watch the stars and see death approaching. The Valdran had learned their lesson. The rest of the galaxy was about to learn it too. Humanity was here. And humanity was not going anywhere.